Hi, I'm Erin Clarelli, and I'm an autism mom. I have almost 20 years of experience navigating services, biomedical approaches, and advocating for my son. Through all of this, I've had so much personal growth and learned about the power of perspective. My intention on this show is to share ideas, build community, and remind you that you aren't alone on this journey. And maybe even help you see more in your child and yourself. So let's do this. Let's grow through autism together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Growing Through Autism. I'm Erin, and today I have an incredible guest. She is an occupational therapist, but not like every other occupational therapist that you've met. Mind you, my son Noah is 18, so we've worked with a lot of different people. And not saying that any of them are bad, but she is amazing. Not only does she have a wealth and depth of knowledge and experience, but what really sets her apart is her mindset. That mindset of presuming competence, fully respecting the people that she works with, talking to them and treating them age appropriately, regardless of what things look like on the outside. Just embodying that mindset and being mindful of inclusion and treating people like people. It's huge, and it goes a long way, and it shines through not just in when she's working with people, but when she's just talking to anybody or engaging with anybody, and it's huge. And mindset has been so strong for her that now she's created a program also for professionals because she's seen the impact that it makes in her practice. So regardless of whether you're an occupational therapist or speech therapist or whatever it is, mindset can be helpful. And she's sharing that. She's advocating for our autistic loved ones, advocating for our community. And so I'm so excited for you to meet Erin Clarelli. She's amazing. I love her.
What a warm welcome. That feels so good. Can you do that for me every morning? Just amp me up. Oh,
Oh,
so great. Yeah, we've got Erin squared here, but I think yeah, that was beautifully said. I definitely like to highlight that I advocate with and for this community, right? My biggest teachers are the individuals that we serve here at Sunrise. And yeah, I'm just so excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
oh, I'm so happy to have you here because I feel like you have so much to share, so much goodness. For people who don't know you, I'd love to just like share one of my first experiences with you so that people can get a feel for you. So sorry if it's a little bit long, but I met Erin at the Family Speller Camp. Yes, the same camp that I'm always talking about because it's so good. But Erin and what she brings is part of that magic that I'm always talking about. She definitely is a huge contributor to making it so impactful and so incredible for everybody who's participating. And so what I remember is one of the first camps that we went to, the campers were going to be shooting like a bow and arrow. And I remember he has open communication when it comes to text based. And he made it really clear he wanted to shoot the bow and arrow. And he was excited. And kind of like Noah, sometimes when that excitement happens, it ends up leading to dysregulation, or you don't have as much control over your body as like maybe you would when you're not as excited. And so he's trying to get himself there, but he's struggling. And Erin just comes in with like such a sense of ease and like this calming but confident presence, and confident in your ability to support, but then also confident in like, I know that he wants to do it, and I believe and I'm confident that he can do it. Doesn't matter what it looks like to get there, but I'm confident that he can do it. And it's like she didn't have to say it, you could feel it as she stepped in. And so then I'm watching her just gradually helping him focus on each individual step, telling him, I know that you understand. It's just about coaching your body through each step. And it helped slow him down. It helped him motor through each step, and he shot that arrow. And I remember crying afterwards because I was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like feeling all of that. And I could tell he felt good and she felt good. And I think everybody just felt it. Um, so when I think of Erin, like every time I'm with her, I feel that. So yeah. I know, thinking
It's
about it,
yeah.
it's so impactful. And like we've worked with you for 6 months. Like I've known you for a while, and I finally found a way to work with you. And in these short 6 months, not just Noah, but me and Noah have made a lot of progress. Like from session to session, I keep feeling it, and I'm just always like in awe. I'm just so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
It's really great to hear those outside perspectives because, I do a lot of self-reflection of like who am I and what am I bringing to this community and how am I contributing, in my own unique way. My point in saying that is essentially that's just something that I think I was never really taught, right? I think it was self-taught for myself in like believing in my capabilities because through my childhood and just my journey of being where I'm at now, it's like kind of didn't have a choice but to figure it out and be confident in myself. Like I have to be
yeah.
my biggest supporter. So I think that has just totally overflowed into my work, and people will point it out to me of like, you just come in and you just are like, you believe in them. There's no doubt in what they're able to do. And it's not something that I'm even consciously aware of anymore. It's just like, I'm here, we're going to do this, we're going to make it happen because I believe in you. So that's really meaningful. When you said you were going to share a story, I was like, oh, where are we going with this? Which one it's going to be? And you know what? I remember that activity. I remember that moment now that you shared it. But for me, it felt so natural and just what I do in the day to day that I almost forgot about it. So thank you for bringing it back up. But to answer your question of like who I am and how I got here, I went through my OT schooling. I always knew I wanted to work in this community. I had started out in a gymnastics program in my best friend uncle's sports facility. I think this community could really relate to just the path nudging you to where you need to go, right? You just say yes to things and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is totally in alignment with what I'm doing. So that's kind of been every step along the way. Not to make it too long, I graduated. I got the typical cookie cutter OT job. I was working in an outpatient clinic where families come and drop off their kid for an hour and then pick up, and in the schools. And I just knew deep down inside there was so much more than what we were providing based on the systemic boundaries we had because of insurance or because of, the funding for the school district or like the beliefs in both those areas. Mindset work for parents, for ourselves as professionals, and the individuals we serve is so huge because we are working against beliefs that have been ingrained so strongly in our society and in our schooling. So there was just this innate nudge of like, this isn't right. I know there's more. So long story, even longer, I found another clinic. It was working that way. Things happened again where that crumbled because of systemic challenges, and that led me to Sunrise. And I was like, I just need to create a business for me to work in myself and just make the impact I know I can make. And now 3 years later, I have a team of 4 other OTs that work with me and an amazing network of community. Like we're connected in so many different ways and different professionals that are doing this like kind of parallel, but we've all just merged together of like, hey, we're together, we're doing our own thing. We love that autonomy as our own individual selves. So now I've gotten to the point where like, okay, I thought I could do this on my own. Like, gotta kick that ego out the door. I need to figure out how to reach more people, right? And instead of saying yes to every family that comes across my plate and just like drowning in trying to get everyone high quality service as much as I would like to be able to do that, I'm like, I need to make a more systemic change. I need to make a change in the people that are serving these communities. And that's what has led me to mentorship and really helping OTs reprogram their beliefs of what they've been taught in school, what they're taught in their first jobs and their mentorship. I'm in so many Facebook groups or communities with OTs, and I'm still seeing language that I like. For me, it's just so mind-blowing that people are still saying like, oh, they don't have the cognitive ability to do this, or they don't understand, so we need to work on these foundational. And like, I'm over on the other side of the screen on Facebook like, oh, like picture anger inside out,
Yes.
And that's where my mindset and like personal work comes in of, all right, how are we going to change this? Because coming in angrily or like dismissing their thoughts isn't going to change anything. We need to really help them do their own personal reflection.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm biased, but OTs are like so adept. Like we're so trained to be doing this work, and all it takes is connecting those dots of what we learned in school separate from one another. You connect it, and it's like,
Yeah.
So that's what's led me here. That's my long-winded version. That's got me connected with such amazing people like you and Noah and, all the community connections we have.
Then it sounds like, I don't know if you would call it perspective or maybe your vision of how you started out as an OT and what you envisioned for yourself, going through that process and evolving and understanding the value of mindset. Is that what kind of led you to developing a program for other professionals? Can you tell us maybe what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. Good question. I know my own ups and downs of that. Starting as a new grad, feeling excited, and then be like, oh, this isn't what I thought, And then starting at a new clinic and be like, I found it. I found the place. Those ups and downs, just like in my early years of development and teenagehood and all that, of I need to learn how to manage setbacks. I need to learn how to find resiliency in times where I don't think it's even possible, where I'm just like, what am I doing? The system is broken, when you feel defeated. Yeah. So I think that was an underlying experience that I wasn't really consciously aware of until more recently. I was just doing it as survival and leaning into therapists and leaning into reading self-help books and podcasts. And that felt very separate from my career path. It was more personal, and I put it over here. And then seeing that and experiencing it, and then talking with other clinicians, and then even taking students that are coming through for their fieldwork rotations and are still in their last few months of schooling, and hearing they're still going through the same things. There were moments, repeated moments, little windows of light of oh my gosh, this makes sense. Oh, here's another person that's saying this. This makes sense. It was probably 5 or 6 of those where I was like, oh, this is what we need to be doing. This is where we need to come in and change the system, instead of waiting all these years and trying to change people's beliefs in a way that is very top down. We need to come in and see them as a human, see their experience, and give them the knowledge. It has to be hand in hand. And that's where my two worlds kind of collided.
How you work with people and working on yourself. And it's that work on yourself, whether you realize it or not, totally translates into working with people. Because I feel like that with Noah. I came to a point where I'm doing all the things and I'm trying to control all these things. And I finally just felt like, oh my gosh, am I even helping? Because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I was in some capacity, but it just felt so heavy. And once I was like, you know what? Maybe instead of focusing on him and him changing, focusing on myself, because I can only really control myself, and then really doing work around mindset, resiliency, all those things that we talk about, all these personal development kinds of things, and going inward and reflecting. Once I started doing that in myself, I would also share some of what I was learning with Noah, right? Just talking, because I always feel like it's helpful to share and talk. But then I started seeing and feeling a difference in when we did work together, even when maybe it felt like things weren't moving as fast as I wanted. It didn't feel like that heaviness. I definitely see that correlation between that work on yourself and it pouring into everything else that you do.
Yeah. And I want to highlight the work that you do on yourself is really hard to carve out the time, especially as a parent of a neurodivergent child. Like you're saying, you just wanted to do everything for him and make everything quote unquote better, right? Yeah. And I think I've seen it time after time where it's you get that initial diagnosis and it's, okay, what do I have to your nervous system goes into that fight flight, right? Likely fight. I need to figure this out. I'm going to fight to figure this out. I'm going to provide every service. I'm going to work really hard to change, because you're right. That is the narrative when you first get that diagnosis, and what, the medical professionals and society tells you is we need to change this or we need to fix it, when in reality it needs to be seen and understood and validated. And then the skills are built, not to change, just build on the strengths that the individual already has. It could feel cliche if you're listening of oh, I know, I need to work on myself, right? You have to fill your cup first before filling up someone else's is so cliche, and it could give you a knee-jerk reaction. So if that's coming up of yeah, okay, lady, sure, I'm going to work on myself. And right, you can have both. It doesn't need to be this whole I'm fully in and I'm doing a 7-day retreat. There's little bite-sized things that you could do in the day-to-day as, a professional or a parent. So
what could
Yeah.
somebody do, like those little bite-sized things? Any
Yeah.
suggestions?
One of my favorites, especially during times of dysregulation when I'm supporting this community, is to just bring awareness to my feet. I'm going to feel my body on the floor. I am connected to something, because a lot of times when dysregulation happens with our loved ones, it's like you're not even in your body. You're so focused on, how am I going to get this individual safe? How am I going to get them feeling good? Or you're thinking about, I'm out in the community, what are other people thinking? There's so much going through your head that you're not even in your body. You're just in that fast thinking mode.
Yeah.
So in those moments, you could still be thinking about that stuff and addressing it and figuring out how to support the situation. But hey, I feel my feet on the ground. I feel the balls of my feet. I feel my heels. I feel my toes. Go. That took all of like 5 seconds.
Right.
So it's those quick things. Another thing, I like to do a quick mindset shift is, if not in dysregulation, because this one takes a little bit longer, but why? I ask myself, like, why am I doing this? Where is this urge to either hold tight, like you're saying, and be like, oh, we need to do this right now? Why do I feel like I need to do this right now? Is it because I'm intuitively sensing that he's in his zone and he really wants to work on whatever we're working on? Or is it because I'm like, oh my gosh, we didn't work out yesterday and now we need to get our workout moves in, or, or like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Yeah. I say workout because that's a lot of the work we do, right? The intentional motor stuff, but it could be anything, like, right? Like, am I trying to get him in the car really quick because I know he needs to get to school? And it's like, is like a 10 to 20 minute buffer really going to make or break the whole day?
Yeah.
So why, pausing and asking why in yourself. And then for therapists too, it's like, why are we working on certain goals? Is it because insurance is saying they need to work on this goal? Is it because a family came in and they were like, we need to work on fine motor, and you just listened to that? You didn't advocate like, hey, let's look at some of this other praxis stuff first. So why is like my favorite question. I'm like a little toddler, it's like, why does it exist? But I ask myself it all the time.
Yeah, but then I think it can lead you, kind of guide you a bit better, instead of kind of just wandering aimlessly trying to do things for the sake of doing them.
Yeah. And that just pause of curiosity of why is what breaks our loop of being in that lower part of our brain, the survival brain, because it brings in logic. That question of why connects you to that logic brain. You're like, oh, I don't know why actually. And it resets us. It breaks our own motor loops to pause.
In the past, I didn't think about me being part of a motor loop or having a motor loop. But even in those times of dysregulation, we react the same way. Those feelings of however we typically react, they come up. And it's like, I think practices, like you said, really feeling your feet and pressing them into the ground, or trying to pause and ask yourself why, it takes you out of that reactive state. And like you said, it gets you more intentional. And then I think then it's easier to answer those questions of, how do I support this person through, versus just that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
That's so good. I know I use breathing a lot. Sometimes as I say things to Noah, I'm also saying them to myself. So I'll be like, no, we're just going to focus on our breath, because it's going to physiologically help us calm down, and it gives us something to focus on that's not whatever's going on. And I'll breathe. And sometimes I just start breathing now, and I do it so he can hear the breath. And sometimes I hear him breathing and sometimes not, but almost every time I hear him or see him making an effort to focus on that and calm himself down, slow himself down. And it helps me too. That way I don't get reactive. I feel like the breathing is my version of my feet on the floor. But I'm going to totally try that.
Yeah, you could totally do those two together too. Like, I'm just taking one big breath and I'm pushing my feet into the ground on the exhale. I would love to comment on the breathing and modeling for Noah. As an OT, zones of regulation strategies, that's like drilled into my mind as a new OT, right? It's like that was the main thing we did for regulation. So these individuals have probably gone through so many different therapies. There's different people telling them, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Everything's fine. Take a deep breath. So when we piece together everything that we know of the mind-body disconnect, like how frustrating is it that like, hey, take a deep breath, and okay, I get it, but I can't, because the diaphragm is a muscle, and our lungs, all of that is intentional. So coaching the motor of deep breaths when we are regulated is another great strategy. So in those moments, I've seen specifically with Noah where we're both modeling those deep breaths. We sit there, essentially, for those listening or watching, it's just Right? It's like an audible exhale. That felt so good right
Yeah.
now. You'll see that maybe in the moment he's not taking those exact deep breaths with me. And we're not sitting there saying, like, take a deep breath with me. It's just we're
Yeah.
modeling with no expectations. And then maybe 30 seconds to a minute later, you see his shoulders go, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just a parasympathetic response of like, hey, like my nervous system automatically triggered that. And that's okay.
Mhm.
However, we get that breath to just exhale and engage that diaphragm is huge. So I just want to highlight that these strategies that you're using for yourself, try to avoid placing a demand on the individual, your loved one or you're serving to do it. You could externally model it and say like, hey, I'm feeling my feet on the ground right now. This seems to help me. Or you could say,
Yeah.
I'm just taking some deep breaths, modeling and narrating. You could even say, I'm feeling my stomach expand and relax. Again,
Yeah.
not putting that demand, modeling and
Right. And
narrative.
I think that's so important about the delivery not coming out as a demand and using modeling, narrating. I think it goes so much farther
Yeah.
because there's something about any little thing that feels like a demand, even if it's something I know no one wants to do. It's like once I'm like, okay, do this thing, then it's kind of like, I don't know if it triggers that different part of the brain that's harder to gain control of.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And a
yeah,
demand, I think that could be a taboo word. I also want to clarify that we're not saying like antecedent to behavior or any of that kind of language. It's really like it's a demand on the nervous system. And then the nervous system perceives it as a threat. And then that motor response is automatic. So, for anyone, like a demand for us of going up on stage or even getting on this podcast, right? Like it's like
yeah,
my heart rate increased and I had to slow my body down, even though I know I'm safe and I'm choosing to be here. It's just this
right.
automatic pattern that happens
Mhm.
because these individuals are often, they want to do what we're asking them to do. They really
Yeah.
want to be engaged in the activity and learning and getting their body to move. So they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So I think that if we're getting there next, I'm kind of pulling us into it of that's why also this mindset work for me has really overflowed not only into parents and professionals, but the individuals we're serving and building
Yeah.
this
Oh yeah.
resiliency and
Yeah.
talking about it. And I know you and Noah and your whole family embraces this. So I'm curious your
Oh,
perspective on it.
I feel like just from experience that whatever mindset and energy that I bring to whatever it is I'm doing, it definitely affects Noah. I mean, in any situation, it affects whoever I'm with, what I bring. And when I think about Noah, and I'm presuming competence, I believe you want to. I'm here to support you through it, and an energy of like, if we do it, great. And if we don't, great, but we're showing up versus, yes, I believe presuming competence, but we're going to do it. It feels different. So I think for me, it's that combination of mindset and energy. It either will empower him to push a little extra when it does get tough. And it could also, when I'm coming with that, we're going to do it, or my mindset doesn't feel as strong that day for whatever reason, I just project my own limiting beliefs on him. So it affects him either way. So I try to make an effort to really be mindful of going into situations where we're working on something, or even day-to-day stuff where I'm making an omelet and he's coming and he's watching, so I invite him to help. Even that, I try to be mindful in those instances as well. But it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said in honoring your humanity, is how I like to say it. If you come in and you're having a stressful day, maybe you missed your cup of coffee or you didn't get to eat lunch yet and you're working with someone or supporting someone, you can say that, like, hey, you know what, I'm a little bit off today. I'm going to try my best to be here and be present and be a good co-regulation partner with you. But if you sense that I'm a little more like frazzled or frenetic, that's why. Like explaining that in an age appropriate way. I'll say that to a 6-year-old too. I'll say like, oh, you know what? I'm having a hard day, but I'm going to do my best and I'm here with you. So
Yeah.
laying that foundation is really huge too, because it's showing the humanity, and it's okay to show up in a way that isn't your best self every day. And every day is going to be different and it ebbs and flows. So
Yeah, it's good for them to see that and feel that and
yeah.
hear from you, like, oh, wow, you're experiencing that too. So you said co-regulation partner, just in case people don't know what a co-regulation partner is, if you want to explain that.
Yes. So speaking about like energies and how our mindset and what we're saying, this all ties into co-regulation. So if you've been in the therapy world, you may have heard co-regulation when in development as a baby. We co-regulate as a soothing mother or a father, skin to skin contact, all of that. I believe there's a lot of people out there that believe that co-regulation exists through the lifespan. There's some 40, 50-year-olds that I know that still can't self-regulate. Like, we need each other. We need sense of safety, which is a term called neuroception, of how our subconscious mind perceives other people. So things like body language, or even my breathing rate or my heart rate, all of that, like, Erin, you are processing subconsciously. You don't even know, right? And I'm doing the same to you. And it's building this sense of safety within one another. And even environmental factors, colors in our environment, jagged edges in our environment, all of that could make our nervous system perceive a threat. Is that a primal part of our body? So co-regulation, I think, exists everywhere, and you can't have self-regulation without co-regulation. And no one is ever like, oh, I've achieved the pinnacle of self-regulation, I don't need anyone to regulate.
Yeah.
So I stay away from the word self-regulation a lot, and I just go to co-regulation. Yes, I could regulate myself in like an isolated environment. If I'm feeling stressed, I could go to a quiet space, do a meditation. But I can't do that unless my husband is able to take care of dinner. We're all so interconnected that co-regulation is huge.
Oh, that's such a good point. And like, sometimes I think, especially in the past, I think, oh, eventually I'm going to know how to self-regulate and all the things. And no, I think we all ebb and flow through all of it. And it's almost just learning tools how to co-regulate in different situations, what works for us.
Exactly. And like all these things that we were speaking about prior are all co-regulation tools, right? Like, by speaking and showing up as your true self and speaking to the individual at an age appropriate level, or speaking to them about what's happening in their body, or coaching their motor, all of those are co-regulation.
We're going to pause here and continue the conversation with Erin next week. Thank you so much for watching or listening and taking the time to learn more about how to support those in the autism community. If you found this conversation valuable or know someone who might, please share it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Growing Through Autism. I hope you'll tune in again to next week's episode. It's going to be really great. Until then, let's keep growing through autism together.